Hi everyone, and welcome to this training on how to actually help parents by reducing stress with your parent training. Before we dive in, I just want to take care of some basic housekeeping items. First, this lesson is broken into 3 sections. The first section will cover just a basic introduction to parent training, including some of the common obstacles to effective parent training and the role that parent stress plays on training. The second section looks at some of the research and what it says we as BCBAs are doing well and areas we could potentially improve upon. We will review a basic parent training framework that incorporates a variety of elements recommended in the research to ensure your parent training is effective. The third section covers your next steps. This section is intended to take the information presented in the first 2 parts and help you apply it to your work with families. Second, you must watch the entire video and complete the quiz at the end of this lesson to get your CEU certificate. You will receive 1 general CEU for completing this course. Please make sure that your name and BCBA number are accurate in the Get Your CEUs tab before you take the quiz. Next, in this lesson, you will see several tabs. In these tabs, you will find downloadable resources, references, how to find your CEU certificate, and a survey. Please make sure to check out all the tabs so you get the most out of this lesson. Finally, if you have any technical challenges or questions about the content, email us at support@masteraba.com. We will be happy to help you out in any way that we can. Let me tell you a little about how I became obsessed with parent training. My background is in early childhood education, and I have always seen value in parent training. But I became obsessed with it once I was forced to look closer at the research and why parent training is actually so important. 6 months after receiving my BCBA certification, I accepted my dream job working for a large nonprofit organization as the director of 2 clinics in New Hampshire. Although it was exactly what I wanted to do, I actually had no idea how to succeed in the role. I was the only active BCBA, and we had 26 clients and 16 staff. The to-do list, once I started the position, never ended, and to make matters worse, I struggled with getting our treatment plans approved through one of the Medicaid managed care companies. More than 80% of our clients had this insurance, so it was critical that I figure out how to get these plans approved more effectively. The reviewer for the insurance company, let's call her Beth, fundamentally disagreed with our program model. We provided clinic-based services, and this reviewer believed that we should provide services in the home. Each plan I submitted resulted in a call from Beth asking the same question: when would all those services be transitioned to the home? Beth argued that home-based services were the only way to ensure that skills generalized to the natural environment. She stated repeatedly that teaching skills in a clinic setting offered little to no value for our clients. As a new BCBA, I questioned our model while at the same time arguing that our families sought clinic-based services intentionally because home-based services weren't a good fit for them. Nearly all our families received home-based early intervention services and found them ineffective or aversive for various reasons. Despite this explanation, Beth, from her office in California, as far away from our families in New Hampshire as she could be, kept telling me she would not approve the treatment plans if they did not include a plan to transition services to home. Knowing that home-based services not only didn't work for our families, but also didn't work for our business model, I couldn't write a plan I didn't intend to follow. I dug into the research on clinic-based services and generalization strategies. Any extra time I had during the day, I spent brainstorming ways to demonstrate the generality of skills learned in the clinic. The research all pointed to parent training as the answer. Even with home-based services, skills won't generalize to the natural environment unless the parents have some basic skills. Although before my research I knew parent training was important, after my research, I saw it as essential and it became my passion. Rather than creating a plan to transition services to the home, I developed a more comprehensive generalization plan with parent training as my focus. Each plan I submitted continued to trigger a phone call from Beth. Although I dreaded each call, these calls helped me hone my parent training plan into a concrete framework that I still use today. This is the same framework that I will be sharing with you in the next lesson. So let's get started by talking about what parent training is exactly. Parent training is a term thrown casually around by ABA professionals as just another part of any ABA program. Parent training is often also referred to as caregiver training, parent coaching, or family treatment guidance. If you call it something different, share with us in the comments below. It's often assumed that if you understand how to implement ABA and teach staff, that you will naturally be able to teach parents. Many of the most common course sequences don't include specific training on how to teach parents or caregivers. This leaves new and even experienced BCBAs using the spray and pray method, hoping that what they do is effective. What do you do during your parent training? Do you teach basic ABA terminology or techniques? Do you allow parents to lead the conversation? Do you use a structured curriculum? Let us know in the comments below. No matter what you're currently doing for parent training, there's a good chance that you see room for improvement. That's why you're here. We are going to look at the most effective ways to help parents, so let's start by looking at what the research says. A study by Bears et al. 2015 evaluated the effectiveness of parent training versus parent education on clinical outcomes. I don't know about you, but until I read this article, I didn't really think too much about the difference. Which are you providing? I always thought I was providing training, but in some ways I realized I might have focused on education because I responded to questions the parents asked me. The authors considered parent education as the delivery of helpful information about a variety of topics, including treatment options, evaluation, and advocacy. Parent training included teaching techniques to address challenging behavior, such as analyzing antecedents and consequences, or implementing strategies to reduce challenging behavior. The authors measured the impact of these two strategies on challenging behavior occurring in the home. Which do you think was more effective? You probably guessed that parent training yielded a better outcome than parent education. What I find interesting about the study is that the parent education, even though it did not directly address issues related to challenging behavior, also saw an improvement, a 31.8% decrease in the ABCI, which is a parent-rated scale to measure challenging behavior. Parent training saw a 47.7% decrease. Yes, this is better, but the question I come back to is why did parent education, which offered no direct strategies for reducing challenging behavior, see this level of improvement? The authors didn't dig too deeply into this question, so I can only speculate. Parent education must have addressed some need for the parent. Maybe it helped them view their child's challenging behavior through a different lens, or maybe it helped them establish more realistic expectations for their child. While it's clear that parent education alone isn't the right answer, it's probably also true that something happened during parent education that created some improvement for the family. Let's keep this in mind while we look at other important research on parent training. Although there's limited available research to help us understand the barriers to providing effective parent training, articles by Helton and Albert Morgan, 2018, and Allen and Warzak, 2000, bring some important barriers to life. Clinicians, especially ones who are new to the field, may struggle with translating ABA jargon into language parents can understand. Parent motivation may be low due to unrealistic expectation for progress or a lack of intermediate goals that show progress. Clinicians might not have time to prepare materials or create lessons for parents, causing them to just wing it when it comes time for parent training. Parent training may lack structure, which can lead parents to trying to address the crisis of the week. Clinicians might have difficulty getting parents to buy into using recommended strategies, and parent stress might also play an important role in getting parents to participate in effective training. For parent training to be truly effective, it's important to address as many of these potential barriers as possible. The focus of this training will be on reducing parent stress, but in Lesson 3, we will discuss some of the strategies to reduce these other barriers as well. A study by Baker et al. 2005 looked at the stress experienced by parents of toddlers with and without ASD. They highlighted many sources of parent stress for parents of autistic children, including their child's intellectual deficits, especially if they had difficulties with verbal expressive language or cognitive inconsistencies. Their child's personal characteristics, including adaptability, demandingness, and level of distractibility, also impacted parent stress. Other factors included disruptive behaviors, expectations for long-term care, the severity of their child's impairments, difficulties with relating to their child, overwhelming caretaking demands, the need to interact with a large pool of professionals or difficulties with accessing services, the need to gather and make sense of an overwhelming amount of information about diagnosis and interventions, sorting through alternative treatments, some of which might provide conflicting information, monetary stress due to a loss of time at work or additional costs of therapies, and a limit on family opportunities, which might evoke a sense of loss over what the parent expected they would be able to do with their child. Imagine being a parent under the constant watchful eye of different providers, all looking to tell you how to parent your child. You don't spend time with family or friends and can't take your child to Disney like you had once envisioned because of your child's behavior. You're essentially trapped at home, unsure what to do. You finally get your child off the 2-year ABA waitlist and are told you have to participate in parent training. Sure, great, you think, but in reality you wonder where the time and brain space for that will come from. Is it any wonder parents struggle with following through with your recommendations? When parents don't follow through, it's time to look at what we are doing and make changes. It's not the fault of the parents, and it's not about fixing them. It's about our own approach to parent training. Let's take a few minutes to look more closely at the reasons why parents don't follow through with recommendations. According to Allen and Morzak 2000, one of the reasons parents fail to follow through with recommendations are faulty establishing operations. Parents may not be motivated to use the interventions we recommend. This might be because we fail to identify intermediate outcomes and parents have trouble keeping up momentum toward a long-term goal. Parents also encounter competing social approval when family and friends express disapproval of the therapist's recommendations. Aubrey Daniels, 2009, used the picnic analysis of reinforcer effectiveness to explain the impact of different reinforcers on behavior. A reinforcer will be more effective if it is positive, immediate, and certain, or negative, immediate, and certain. Think about how this applies to parent training. What reinforcers are controlling the parent's behavior? Is the progress toward the goals your interventions are designed to achieve immediate and certain enough to motivate the parents? Are there competing reinforcers or punishers derailing the parent's motivation to follow through with your recommendation for interventions? These are critical questions for ensuring effective parent training, but we will look at this more closely in Lesson 3 when we talk about your next steps. Stimulus generalization may also contribute to parents' inability to follow through with your recommendations. If the information has been taught using insufficient exemplars or a narrow range of setting stimuli, it's likely that the parents may not know how to use the intervention in different situations. Some parents might not have a strong history of rule following, making it difficult for you to establish using the intervention as a rule. These are conditions you may or may not be able to control, but you must be aware of how they impact the effectiveness of your parent training. Parents might struggle with response acquisition for a variety of reasons. Maybe the skills you are trying to teach are too complex. Parents might also have difficulty learning new skills if the focus of training is on verbally describing the interventions. Although we know we should use behavioral skills training, we might not always go through the entire process when teaching parents new skills. We might feel that the skill is simple and therefore doesn't really need us to go through the full process. Finally, parents might struggle to learn skills in a chaotic home environment where it's difficult to control extraneous variables that impact effective implementation. Often, interventions we are recommending to parents have direct consequences for the parents, and not all of them are immediately positive. Some interventions have punitive consequences for the parent, even when we recommend something as seemingly innocuous as limiting access to a reinforcer. We might be setting the parent up to either need to entertain their child or deal with an outburst when access is denied. Additionally, there might be competing reinforcing contingencies that act on the parent's behavior of not following through. If their child is playing quietly on the iPad, that's strong reinforcement for allowing their child to continue to play on the iPad. These contingencies have a meaningful impact on parent behavior. It's easy to quickly judge parents for not following through with your recommendations, but as you can see, there are many compelling reasons that this happens. All of these reasons parents fail to follow through with recommendations can add to parent stress. This means that your parent training might actually be making the parent feel more rather than less stressed. When parents know they should do what you recommend, but then they don't, they might feel like a failure. If you want to truly have a positive impact on the families that you work with, stop parent training. You heard that right, but I don't mean for you to stop working with parents. In the next part of this lesson, we will talk about a 4-step framework for parent training that addresses parent stress by starting with partnership rather than training. Before we get into the steps of the framework, let's take a look at an article by Taylor et al., 2019. The article is called Compassionate Care and Behavior Analytic Treatment. Can Outcomes Be Enhanced by Attending to Relationships with Caregivers? The authors surveyed parents of autistic children to determine their perceptions of the relationship skills of behavior analysts. Although the authors only received a small response, just 95 parents responded, their work provides us with the opportunity to discuss important aspects of building relationships with parents. It's an interesting article, and I recommend taking a closer look at the questions asked and consider where parents might rate your skills. You can find the details of the article in the conclusion and resources lesson. The authors asked 15 questions related to listening and collaboration. This section included questions such as, the behavior analyst regularly asks me if I'm happy and how things are going with my child. And the behavior analyst regularly modifies procedures and skill targets based on my concerns. For this section, the average agreement score was 74.6%. 8 of these questions have a mean score of 4 or higher and a percent agreement above 75%. If you consider that for a lot of our industry, the standard criteria is often 80%, only 4 questions received that 80% agreement. The question with the lowest score was, the behavior analyst compromises with me when we do not agree. It received a score of only 58.9%. The question with the highest score was, when first meeting my child, the behavior analyst listened to my concerns about my child, which received a score of 93.7%. The results may or may not be surprising to you, but I think the question that received the lowest score provides us with an important cue. Behavior analysts have developed a reputation for being unyielding and even cocky. After the intense master's degree program, practicum, and supervised fieldwork, as well as your practical experience as a BCBA, you probably feel like you have a vast well of knowledge you can share with parents. You might think you have the answers to the parents' concerns and they should listen to you. Your education might have focused on teaching you to choose and implement the best program, relying on the data to make treatment decisions, not the parents' thoughts or opinions. Consider how this attitude is perceived by those around you. The authors asked 21 questions related to empathy and compassion. This section included questions such as, the behavior analyst understands what I struggle with in parenting my child, and the behavior analyst respects my cultural values and beliefs. For this section, the average agreement score was 72.34%. Only 6 of those questions have a mean score of 4 or higher and percent agreement above 80%. The question with the lowest score was, the behavior analyst cares about including all of my children. It received a score of only 51.06%. The question with the highest score was, the behavior analyst acknowledges and expresses appreciation of my child's strengths, which received a score of 90.53%. In addition to the question with the lowest score, 2 other questions scored under 60%, including the behavior analyst acknowledges his or her own mistakes, and the behavior analyst regularly asks how I'm doing. Whether or not you believe you do these things, consider the parent's perspective for a minute. Is it at all possible that you jump into sessions covering your own agenda without taking the time to really listen to what the parent is saying? You have a busy schedule with a lot of boxes to check. Is there room for improvement in this area? The authors asked 11 questions related to behaviors that could harm the therapeutic relationship. This section included questions such as, the behavior analyst failed to communicate with me, and the behavior analyst focuses too much on my child's challenging behavior. For this section, lower agreement scores are better. The average agreement score was 15.8%. Only 4 of those questions had a mean score of 4 or higher, and none of the questions had higher than 25% agreement. The question with the highest score, or that was most problematic, is, the behavior analyst seems to have his or her own agenda about the direction of my child's program, which received a score of 24.2% agreement. The question with the lowest score, or that was least problematic, is, the behavior analyst uses too much technical language that I don't understand, which received a score of 7.4% agreement. In addition to the question with the most problematic score, 2 other questions scored above 20%, including, the behavior analyst underestimates my child's ability, and the behavior analyst has an authoritarian demeanor rather than a collaborative one when discussing decisions about my child's program. It's clear why these attitudes would be harmful to the therapeutic relationship. I don't know about you, but I have been guilty of going into an initial assessment or session with a plan. That seems like a good idea most of the time. If we don't have a plan, it's easy to spin our wheels and accomplish nothing. The challenge comes when our plans overshadow the parent's thoughts and values. The authors identified several barriers to BCBAs developing strong relationship skills and using compassionate care. There's no doubt you want to build strong relationships with the families you serve, so let's look at what might be standing in your way. First, many of the verified course sequences don't place an emphasis on collaborative relationships. The courses often don't include specific training on relationship building. Also, when a master's degree program focuses on precise language, it fosters an environment rich in technical jargon. It can be difficult for clinicians to relax this insistence on terminology in favor of more parent-friendly language. Most BCBAs are under constant restrictions on their time. Funding sources might play a role in diminished relationships since they often limit the time allowed with parents. Along with this, large caseloads and other demands put pressure on BCBAs to be efficient with their time, which may create a sense of urgency to communicate important points quickly. In addition to these barriers, parents' emotional and behavioral responses may serve as punishers to the clinician. Parents of children with developmental and behavioral differences experience intense emotions that new clinicians may be ill-prepared to navigate. How the clinician responds to the parents significantly impacts the relationship. This article highlights the importance of building collaborative relationships with parents as part of a comprehensive parent training framework. The response to the survey was small, so it's impossible to make assumptions about the generality of the results. That being said, the authors provide important talking and training points. There's clearly room for improvement in the way BCBAs interact with parents and caregivers. BCBAs need specific training in how to build collaborative relationships. We should not assume that this skill will develop naturally. Not everyone entering the field has a history of reinforcement for strong relationship skills. Self-awareness and self-compassion significantly impact relationships. This means that BCBAs must work to develop mindfulness skills as part of their professional development. Early in my career, I experienced many of the barriers the authors identified, and I really struggled with parent training. I wanted to help families, but again and again, I found that I failed. One of my biggest eye-opening moments came when a mother I thought I had been helping for 3 years suddenly broke down in front of me. I worked with her sweet young son, who was just 3 years old. When I took him out in the community, he would skip when he walked, and he was always happy and cooperative. Quite the change from my other clients, and I always looked forward to my time with him. He didn't speak and he wasn't interested in play, so most of our time was spent practicing with his AAC device and playing. Over the years I worked with him, he made great progress with no real behavioral challenges. I spent some time with his mother each week to discuss his progress and ways she could incorporate his use of AAC at home. It felt like a huge ABA win for me and this great kid. He was the epitome of what ABA could do for a little boy. 3 years into working with him, he's 6 years old and still so pleasant in the community with me. Each time I brought him home, his mother asked how he was, and I replied that he was amazing and told her all the fun things we did. Her response always seemed surprised, and although I thought that was strange, I never really pressed her about it. One day she looked at me and said, "I want to explain why you always see me in this sweatshirt. I don't want you to think I don't have clothes or that I'm weird." She went on to explain that Jay, her son, made her wear the sweatshirt every day. If she didn't put it on, he would go into a rage. What I didn't know was that this sweet cooperative client was a dictator at home. He hit his mother, attacked his younger siblings, and non-verbally demanded that everyone cater to his every whim. I failed this mother because I fell into the trap of believing that I knew what this child and family needed. This situation was a catalyst for my deep dive into parent training. I knew I never wanted to fail another family in this way. Sure, it would be easy to blame the mother for not telling me what was going on. I showed up each week, and she could have simply asked for help. This isn't a useful attitude, as it does nothing to help ensure that this doesn't happen with other families. My research showed me that I can influence my relationships with parents by building a partnership with them from the beginning. This became part of my parent training framework, which we will take a look at now. Over the years, I have tweaked the way I work with parents and have developed a system that works. This system actually reduces parent stress rather than increasing it, which is something I know we all want. The 4 steps are: build a partnership with parents, conduct a baseline assessment of stress and skills, teach the skills identified through the assessment, and conduct a follow-up assessment to measure progress. This might sound a little simplistic, but I'm going to break down each of the steps so you can see why it works. The first step in the framework is to build a partnership with parents. This goes beyond pairing yourself with reinforcement as we do with our clients. It's about truly bringing the parents into the process as an equal. There are 5 steps to building a partnership with parents. The first is to identify your goals for the interaction. What is it you want to communicate or accomplish? Next, identify the parents' goals and values and their fears or roadblocks using the ACT matrix. Then assess the parent's behavior also using the ACT matrix. This allows you to take an objective look at the parent's behavior as either access or escape maintained. Once you understand the parent's behavior, you then practice perspective taking. By putting yourself in the parent's shoes, you can make treatment decisions that better align with the parent's values and abilities. Finally, as you consider all of the information you gather in the first 4 steps, you can frame your message or what you want to communicate with the parents in a way that motivates their movement or gets them to act on what you want them to do. As much as I'd like to go deeper into this topic because it has such a monumental impact on parent training, this training just isn't long enough to cover it. Learn more about building partnerships in the lesson called Enhancing Interactions: How to Use the ACT Matrix to Build Partnerships with Parents and Staff. The next step of the framework is to conduct a baseline assessment of the parent's stress and skills. It's important to measure both so you know if your parent training is actually beneficial. 2 choices for measuring parent stress include the Parent Stress Index, 4th edition by Richard R. Avedon, ed. D., and The Parent Stress Scale by Judy O. Berry, ed.D. The PSI is available for purchase on the PAR website. The link will be in the final lesson with the rest of the resources. It is a rating scale that measures 120 items in the three main areas of parental stress, including child characteristics, parent characteristics, and situational or demographic life stress. While the PSI is fairly comprehensive and provides a detailed view of parents' current stressors, it is time-consuming to complete. Dr. Berry created the PSS as an alternative measure. With just 18 questions, it takes only a few minutes to administer the assessment and gain some important insight. It's available for free, and Dr. Berry has given her approval for us to allow you to download it directly from our website. The link will be below this video and again in the final lesson with the other resources. There are few tools available to measure a parent's understanding and application of ABA strategies and interventions. As part of our Achieve curriculum, we have created an assessment that includes simple fidelity checklists for 19 different skills. We provide instructions for monitoring and graphing parent progress. There's no need to complete the entire assessment at once. Simply choose one or two skills to begin based on the goals you and the parents chose when you built a partnership with them in the previous step. Then get a baseline measure by observing their interactions with their child. Make note as to whether or not they exhibit the skill. It's a simple yet effective method for collecting data to submit to insurance companies to demonstrate progress toward parent training goals. If you identify a need that's not included in the assessment, use the included checklists as a guide for creating your own. One of our members said that she and her staff love the assessment and use it daily. The assessment is available for purchase from Teachers Pay Teachers or for free when you buy the Achieve Parent Training curriculum. The link to these resources will also be in the final lesson. The third step in the parent training framework is to actually start teaching skills. Remember the difference between parent training versus parent education that we discussed from the Bears et al. 2015 article. It's important to find a balance in the information that you present to families. The first two steps should have provided you with enough information that you and the parents can work together to identify what skills they need to learn. Helton and Albert Morgan, 2018, described a 10-step process for creating a parent guide for parent training. We will go over this in the next lesson as part of your next steps. Finally, many BCBAs find it best to use a formal parent training curriculum as a guide, then customize it to meet the needs of the individual families. We will also go over curriculum options in the next lesson. The final step is to conduct follow-up assessments using the tools you chose in Step 2 to measure progress toward both stress reduction and skill acquisition. Although it's possible to conduct the follow-up assessment after 6 months when you complete a reassessment, it's likely that there won't be a significant change in the scores right away. Don't be discouraged if change happens slowly. Encourage parents and help them believe that slow progress is often progress that can be sustained over time. Taylor et al. 2019 looked at a curriculum for teaching relationship skills to behavioral health staff. The curriculum included 2 sections, establishing and maintaining collaborative relationships and compassionate care. In the section for establishing and maintaining collaborative relationships, the curriculum included activities on understanding family perspectives, building a therapeutic relationship, and assessing and repairing the therapeutic relationship. In the section for compassionate care, the curriculum included activities on engaging in positive social interactions, demonstrating empathy, demonstrating compassion, and demonstrating collaboration. The curriculum breaks each of these skill areas into more concrete skills that can be taught and practiced. In your personal life, you probably easily show compassion and empathy. The challenge lies in integrating this into your professional interactions with parents. Without specific training, you probably find yourself struggling with parent training. There are many ways to get the training you need to improve your professional relationship skills. Conferences are a great way to build your professional network and connect with other professionals. They also offer access to current training around the most relevant topics in our field. Each state offers an annual ABA conference, or consider attending the national or international conferences when you can. The magic of the internet makes training on a wide variety of topics convenient and affordable. You have access to some of our industry's top minds at an instant. Keep in mind that everyone has different specialties, so look for trainers whose focus is on collaborative relationships and compassionate care. Many of the experts in our field also offer some form of mentoring, whether they offer mastermind groups, memberships, or one-on-one coaching. Consider investing a little time and money to surround yourself with others interested in improving their skills. We already talked about 2 surveys you can use to assess parents' stress and identify the factors that most impact the parents' stress levels. But let's take a few minutes to look at them a little more closely, since reducing parent stress should be an important outcome of parent training. Remember the PSI? The PSI offers both a full-length and a short-form version. The full-length survey is 120 questions, and according to the website, it takes about 20 minutes to administer. The short-form version of the assessment contains 36 questions and takes about 10 minutes to administer. There are several options for purchasing both the assessment tool and scoring reports. On average, you will pay about $11 for each assessment for the full-length version and $8 for each assessment for the short-form version. This varies depending on whether you order paper copies of the assessment software or use Perry Connect, the online assessment system, for administration and scoring. Keep in mind, to use this assessment to monitor progress, you will need to administer it multiple times. While the cost can add up, it provides you with good information. The full-length assessment offers 2 domain scores and 13 subscales to assist with treatment planning and progress monitoring. The assessment has been translated into more than 30 languages, making it appropriate for use with diverse populations. There's no doubt that child behavior significantly impacts parent stress. One of the main ways we attempt to help children be more successful in different environments is to reduce the challenging behavior that limits their access to naturally occurring reinforcers. When the parents are stressed because of the child's behavior, the child gets a much lower rate of reinforcement in the natural environment. To address this, the PSI includes these 6 subscales in the child domain: distractibility or hyperactivity, adaptability, reinforces parent, demandingness, mood, and acceptability. Many elements of parent skills, life, and mental health impact the parent's response to raising a difficult child. The PSI includes the following 7 subscales in the parent domain to identify the elements that most impact each family: competence, isolation, attachment, health, role restriction, depression, and spouse or parent-partner relationship. The PSS was created by Berry and Jones in 1995 as an alternative to the PSI. The PSS has 18 questions that include both positive and negative aspects of parenthood. This assessment uses a standard 5-point scale for parents' self-report or as part of an interview. The assessment asks parents to rate agreement with statements such as, "Caring for my children sometimes takes more time and energy than I have to give," and "I enjoy spending time with my children." The assessment can obtain possible scores from 18 to 90. Higher scores mean a higher overall level of stress in the parent. As some of the questions are phrased in the positive, for example, "I find my child enjoyable," some of the scores are reversed when computing the total score. We have created a simple Excel spreadsheet that will complete this calculation for you. You can download that in the final lesson with the other resources. This assessment provides less specific information than the PSI, but may be a more practical solution if you don't have the time and resources to invest in the PSI. In the previous lesson, I briefly mentioned the Achieve Parent Training Assessment we developed. We created this assessment because we couldn't find anything else available. There are several other parent training curriculums on the market today, some of them with a very high quality, but none of them include a tool for assessing the parent's ABA skills or changes in the parent behavior following training. This is an important step before you begin teaching new skills and following training to measure progress. I found myself constantly creating an assessment for each parent to measure changes in their skills as a result of parent training. The assessment includes fidelity checklists for 11 skill areas for both skill acquisition and behavior reduction. We provide step-by-step directions for collecting and graphing data. The 11 skill areas include choosing target behaviors, understanding functions of behavior, collecting ABC data, analyzing ABC data, using antecedent interventions, identifying and teaching functionally equivalent replacement behaviors, using consequence interventions, teaching communication, teaching play skills, teaching social skills, and teaching life skills. Many of the above skills are broken into sub-skills, making the assessment comprehensive. With this assessment, I simply print a new copy each time I want to conduct the assessment, or print just the relevant pages if I don't need the whole assessment. I can conduct observations as often as necessary, and it's simple to enter the data into a graph or an online data collection program such as Catalyst or Central Reach. Once you choose the assessments you want to use, it's time to think about the curriculum you will use to teach the skills identified by your assessment and at the request of parents. Through most of my career, I created my own curriculum for each parent based on what their individual needs are. I created materials needed prior to each session or just winged it and emailed them materials I created after the session. This made parent training time-consuming and stressful. Although there are several options for ABA parent training curriculums available, most focus on reducing challenging behavior. These curriculums can be helpful, but do not address the child's other needs. Also, remember back to the Taylor et al. 2019 article. One of the areas of concern was the behavior analyst's focus on challenging behavior. Using a curriculum that primarily focuses on behavior reduction strategies is likely to leave parents sharing this concern. An article by Helton and Albert Morgan, 2018, describes 10 steps for creating a parent guide or curriculum for parent training. The first 6 steps are general for all parents. Once you create this part of the guide, you can share it with all families. These steps include 1. Define and explain ABA. 2. Describe common ABA terms. 3. Provide information about the behavior intervention plan. 4. Describe common strategies using parent-friendly language. 5. Define different types of data. 6. Provide sample graphs to describe behavior change. Once you create this part of the curriculum, you can break each part down into manageable chunks to share with families. Create handouts and assignments that correspond to each part of the curriculum to help parents remember what you talked about and practice the skills you taught. According to the authors, the last 4 steps should be customized for each family to ensure you address their specific needs. These steps include 7. Customize the guide using their child's name and target behaviors. 8. List additional resources parents can access. 9. A list of references that lists relevant terms. And 10. Create a table of contents. While creating this guide takes a considerable amount of time up front, it provides you with control over the content. Most of the content you can reuse with different families. Keep these things in mind when creating your curriculum. Ensure that the language avoids jargon and is relatable to parents. provide only necessary information, and incorporate parent choice and values in your curriculum. If you simply don't have enough time to create your own curriculum, choose one of the commercially available ones and adapt it to suit your specific families. A good curriculum will include lessons that work independently of each other, so you can pick and choose which lessons are right for each family. To help you all get started with a parent training curriculum as part of this training, we are going to give you a free sample of our Achieve Parent Training curriculum. This sample includes 3 of my favorite lessons, including Introduction to Teaching New Skills, Importance of Motivation when Teaching New Skills, and Building a Collaborative Relationship with Your Child. Each lesson in the Achieve curriculum includes homework assignments and a quiz. Use these lessons with your families and as a guide if you choose to create your own curriculum. Before we wrap up, let's just take a moment to review your next steps. Given the research we covered earlier in the training, you now know how important it is to build a partnership with the parents you work with prior to starting any formal teaching. Look for CEUs that use ABA strategies such as ACT to improve relationships. These strategies tie in well to what you currently do and bridge the gap you might experience from your education to your clinical practice. Choose which assignments align best with your available resources and the needs of your families. If you find or know of other available assessments, let us know in the comments below. We are always looking for new resources to share with all of you. Create or choose a curriculum for teaching the skills you identified with your assessments. It can be time-consuming to create your own, so don't forget to download the sample lessons from the Achieve Parent Training curriculum in the final lesson. Make sure to check out the final lesson, Conclusion and Resources, to access all the resources mentioned throughout this training. You made it to the end of this course. Pass the quiz to earn your certificate. There is also a survey in the Survey tab. Please take a minute to complete this so that I can continue to improve the courses that I offer. You will receive 1 general BACB CEU for completing the course. Make sure that your BACB number is correct. In the Get Your CEUs tab before taking the quiz. This will ensure that your certificate populates correctly. If you have any trouble or questions, email us at support@masteraba.com.